more candy or soda or freaking lobster tails for your 7 kids from your 7 freaking baby daddies. And yes, that is a real thing.
I do feel bad for all the children out there, but again, at what point is our empathy clouding our judgment? At what point are we gonna call out the bad parents that just can't close their legs?
Hello, and welcome to the 12 Days of Tradmas. If you're new around here, my name is Kit, and Tradmas is a series I do in December where I talk about the harmful beliefs and ideas promoted by certain influencers, content creators, and so on. Basically, my normal content, but more of it and with a festive flair. And today... You know, longtime watchers of my channel might know that it takes a lot to get me angry. And that's not just because I view the content, script, edit, and rehearse all before filming, which gives me plenty of time to moderate my emotions. That is just generally who I am. And even when my limit is reached, I'm pretty quick to forgive, which is simultaneously a blessing and a curse. I don't like to be angry, but I have let things slide that I shouldn't have. All that to say, I've watched these videos twice and I'm still angry. And I apologize in advance for any repetition, though from 2 people, both videos we'll be looking at are about the same subject, and I'm sure some things will be repeated. And after that long intro, today we're looking at Brett Cooper and Amir Odom's videos, Who Needs Food Stamps When You Can Just Steal Food, and Why the SNAP Benefits System is Broken. I'm sure the latter, which is Amir's video, will be especially elucidating. We all know how much he likes to explain things to us. And of course, neither of them saw fit to share sources for their opinions. I suppose we're just to take their word for it. And on that note, my sources will be linked below as usual. Let's start with Brett.
And if that continues through the weekend, then SNAP benefits are going to be cut off, and that has caused an uproar online.
She is entirely too cheerful about the thought of people going hungry. Look at that gleeful face. Oh, and if any fans stop by and want to whinge about how
Brett is just sharing her opinions
like myself, sure-ish. She also allowed herself to be labeled an independent journalist by an event, which I would say means she should be held to a higher standard, and yet I'm the one adding sources so people can fact check me. And I'm not the one who has a team, nor is YouTube my job. It's almost like some folks don't care about facts and logic, they just want their opinions validated. Yes, I'm feeling spicy today. Maybe I'll tone it down in editing, maybe not. I'm here filming. It is what it is.
And with the types of videos going viral, I think we see exactly why the welfare system needs to be completely overhauled, because the entitlement in these videos, guys, is certifiably insane.
You know what's actually insane? Basing your opinion on something, in this instance, the 42 million people on Snap, because you watched a few TikToks. TikToks especially curated for you to form this opinion, no less. In this video, Brett is going to show us 8 TikToks, 6 of which are from an account called EBT of TikTok. They literally created an account to show people allegedly, I say allegedly because who knows what on social media, especially TikTok, where people are encouraged to do and say wild things for the attention, is actually real. And honestly, this is Brett's literal job. And she couldn't take the time to find these TikToks herself. They have to be curated for her? Damn. But anyway, these videos are obviously created to inspire outrage, which leads to clicks, which leads to comments, which leads to more clicks. We have someone talking about the food she stole for her stuffed salmon, MAGA men are going to be trolling the grocers looking for desperate single moms, it's a taxpayer's job to feed her kids, and so on. And none of them speak in a calm way. They're smug, they're yelling, they have crazy eyes. It's just so on the nose, I don't understand how people fall for this. Well, they probably just don't care. It reaffirms their belief that people on Snap are lazy and entitled, and they don't spare it a second thought after saying, should have made better choices. But more on that in a bit.
All right, so on November 1st, if the government does not reopen after this month-long shutdown, millions of American SNAP benefits will be shut down. And why, you might ask? Well, because there is no money. It has been bled dry. The new spending bill has not been passed. There is now no money for SNAP.
Incorrect. SNAP does have contingency funding, and Trump was ordered to use it. He just refused to do so.
And Republicans have a new spending bill that they want to pass. Democrats want even more money and more programs crammed into that bill, so they voted to shut down the government in protest.
Incorrect. Democrats refuse to pass the budget because they want an extension of expiring tax credits that make health insurance cheaper and a reversal of Trump's cuts to Medicaid. That one big beautiful bill from earlier this year reduced Medicaid spending by $1 trillion from 2025 through 2034.
And that has been going on for 29 days as of the time that I am filming this episode. And of course, everyone is blaming the big bad orange man for this, even though, again, it is the Democrat representatives voting against the reopening of the government time and time again.
As the party in charge of both the House and Senate, is it not the Republicans' responsibility to bring to the table a bill that Democrats will vote on? How are they escaping accountability in this? Rhetorical question. Brett goes into our TikTok montage from here, and words can't express how much I don't care. TikTok is not a reflection of reality. Anyone can post anything, and I'm not going to get upset about something I can't verify.
Meanwhile, the Americans on food stamps are posting videos of themselves stealing, making lobster tail dinners, and exposing how they exploit the system for their own gain.
I have so many thoughts. Please bear with me. What happened to America First? Does Brett not care if her fellow Americans go hungry? Also, does it not bother her that the man who pledged to make America great again won't fund SNAP, but did find $20 billion to send to Argentina? And didn't Doge promise to wipe out fraud and misuse of taxpayer dollars? Shouldn't any issues with SNAP have been taken care of months ago by Elon Musk? So many questions. And I would like to add that, per the available data, SNAP fraud is rare. I honestly don't understand why someone who claims to be a patriot, America First, etc., is so devoted to believing the worst of their fellow citizens. Anyway, let's hear Brett describe SNAP.
As with most government programs, SNAP was created with the best of intentions. It was to help people survive during the Great Depression and to help distribute food that farmers were growing but could not sell. This started in the late 1930s. And in the 90s then, this system, this food stamp system, was later refined to ensure that it was temporary. You needed to be able to prove that you were disabled to stay on SNAP. You were trying to work, you were trying to get a job, you were working certain hours a week, etc. Again, good intentions all the way around. But what that did was just encourage bad actors, encourage some Americans to gamify the system and get dependent. They would work a set amount of hours and not work a single hour more so that they could still get unemployment and food stamps, avoid work because, hey, why would they go get a job when the government is funding their life? And obviously, I want to be clear, we're going to talk about this a little later, that is not the case for every single person who has government assistance, but there are bad actors who have abused the system time and time again.
So basically, we need requirements for SNAP, but requirements are also bad because they encourage people to game the system. Is this Brett trying to say we would be better off without SNAP because then people would have no choice but to find a job without actually saying we'd be better off without SNAP? And because there are some bad actors, we need to penalize everyone who depends on SNAP? Does Brett know the average household receives $332 a month from SNAP? That's not funding someone's life. Does Brett know that there are companies who purposely cut hours so they don't have to pay benefits? I worked for Sodexo in 2011 through 2012, and they would always schedule me for 27 hours so they wouldn't have to give me health insurance. And no, 2 part-time jobs doesn't equal full-time benefits. Brett is so quick to blame people for being on SNAP, but not a word for the corporations that pay people so low and give them so few hours that they have to rely on government assistance. Maybe this will help. Quote, to the lawmakers in Congress who seem to be stuck on Reagan-era myths about the people who rely on food stamps, here's an idea. Let's reframe the idea of SNAP. Don't think of it as food stamps. Think of it as a vital tool in a pro-business agenda. Hear me out. If the prospect of people going hungry doesn't move you, consider some of the other beneficiaries of SNAP, like Walmart, Amazon, McDonald's, and other titans of corporate America whose profits rely on workers who are paid low wages. Such low wages that without SNAP, they couldn't afford food. Yes, it's that shameful tinge of social welfare that American capitalists don't generally want to talk about. Nonetheless, some of the biggest and most profitable American corporate icons pay their employees poverty-level wages while counting on those workers not to collapse from caloric deficits because they're receiving food stamps. Walmart, America's largest employer, gets a double dip of the food assistance program. The first dip comes from keeping labor costs so low that many of its own employees rely on SNAP to survive. Then, Walmart gets another bottom line boost, as a large portion of those SNAP funds get turned around and spent at Walmart. A quarter of all the SNAP shopping in America happens at Walmart, with an additional 4% happening at Walmart-owned Sam's Club. At the same time, a 2020 study from the Government Accountability Office found that Walmart was among the top 4 employers of SNAP and Medicaid beneficiaries in all 11 states surveyed. Other major employers named in the study include McDonald's, Dollar Tree, Dollar General, Amazon, Burger King, and FedEx. End quote. So don't think of it as being for people, just think of the corporations you're depriving of profit, especially as we're in the holiday season. I mean, really, how can you deprive Walmart this way? They need that money.
And all of this that you're going to see today is so incredibly ironic, especially coming on the heels of the No Kings protest. And there have been a few, iterations of the No Kings protest, but there was a big, nationwide No Kings thing that happened a couple of weeks ago. They were out in the streets. They were raging against the machine. Screw Donald Trump, screw the government. And this week, they are back in the streets raging for the machine, begging the machine to come out and bail them out.
The No Kings protests were about the massive overreach and constitutional violations of Trump and his admin, not about the government funding programs we pay taxes into. Genuinely, how does she not realize that?
People, maybe if you spent less time protesting in the streets, you could afford your groceries. Maybe if you spent less time protesting and making your little signs and screaming about Trump, you would have the time to go get a job or maybe make a budget to prepare for the fact that your SNAP benefits might be cut off on November 1st.
SNAP has work requirements, though you can be exempted from them. In Michigan, it's 20 hours a week. But guess what? People with full-time jobs protest. People who have never been on food stamps want them to be funded. Not all of us are selfish and only want things that personally benefit us. Also, looking down on protesting, how American of her. I suppose Brett thinks the tea should have stayed in the crates.
To be fair, I wouldn't be surprised if they hoped that we started to see cities burn in mostly peaceful protests so that they could turn it around on Trump and blame him for civil unrest like they always do. I could see that being part of a plan. I mean, they're already blaming him, and he literally has no power in the situation. For example, Pocahontas Warren, she tweeted this, and she said, "For the first time in modern history, Donald Trump is shutting down SNAP. That means that 42 million Americans will miss out on food assistance funds starting on November 1st. Donald Trump is choosing to let mamas and their babies go hungry." So obviously, Pocahontas is using emotional manipulation here.
First, wow. Second, Elizabeth Warren was right. Granted, Trump was presiding over the longest shutdown in American history, so who knows what would have happened if this had occurred under another president, but regardless, there was still contingency funding for SNAP, and he still refused to use it even though he was ordered to do so. And no, Democrats haven't voted against SNAP. That is such dishonest phrasing. They're not voting for the budget Republicans proposed, which as mentioned earlier is because of the tax credits for health insurance and Medicaid cuts. And as for the idea that Trump has no power here, that's a joke. All he has to do is say jump, and conservatives will ask, how high?
I mean, even the USDA website is making sure that the record is straight. If you go online to look up anything about SNAP, anything like that, this is the first thing you see. Senate Democrats have now voted 12 times to not fund the food stamp program, also known as the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. Bottom line, the well has run dry. At this time, there will be no benefits issued November 1st. We are approaching an inflection point for Senate Democrats. They can continue to hold out for health care for illegal aliens and gender mutilation procedures, or reopen the government so that mothers, babies, and the most vulnerable among us can receive critical nutrition assistance. Yeah, well, specifically, I think the Democrats want the illegal aliens to be able to get their gender mutilation surgery and then go home and recover while having a large bottle of pop that they buy with their EBT cards. That is the America that the Democrats apparently, that's what they're telling us, they want.
So that was indeed on the USDA.gov website, though they did shorten that message a bit when I looked at it. And it is honestly shocking not only how much they lie, but how easily others repeat their lies. Again, there was contingency funding, and Democrats were not holding out for health care for illegals and genital mutilation. And I am baffled by how people can believe that. The lack of comprehension in general in this country is so concerning. And they cheer while the Department of Education is dismantled.
Now, I know that I have made fun of people today, rightfully so, in my opinion, but this whole situation is objectively sad because there are those who do need assistance, who do not take advantage of the program, who are using it in the way that this program was intended to be used. They are also being impacted.
Well, it's nice to see Brett show something for people, but that doesn't change the fact that she's allowing a handful of curated outrage TikToks to outrage her, and she's passing the outrage on in this video. And I'm really not sure what message we're supposed to take away from this. It's okay to use EBT so long as you grovel in gratitude for the taxpayers who provide it. It's okay if you only buy things folks like Brett approve of. Call me crazy, call me a socialist, but I actually would rather my taxes go toward things like SNAP, which by the way is a whole 1.5% of federal spending, than things like aiding another country and committing genocide.
But when there is no deadline, when there is no incentive to get off welfare, when the government gives you a path to rip off taxpayers for years and years on end in a low trust society, that is going to be taken advantage of, as it has been today.
There are limits, there are rules. You don't just apply and are given a $500 card to buy whatever you want. Did Brett look into the reality of SNAP at all before she made this video, or does she just not care? That was a dumb question. I know she doesn't care.
I am not against government assistance in a black and white way, but I am against a system that enables this kind of exploitation. We need new guidelines on who can qualify and for how long. We need new standards on what people can purchase. Like no more fancy Nespresso pods, no more candy or soda or freaking lobster tails for your 7 kids from your 7 freaking baby daddies. And yes, that is a real thing.
The misogyny sure does show up in these videos, huh? Anyway, her proof that this is a real thing is a TikTok. And I would like to note that we don't know the origins of any of these TikToks. They're just being reposted on other accounts, which is where Brett is getting them from. So for all we know, that could be satire or AI, but sure, we should definitely overhaul government programs based on TikToks. Didn't the government want to ban that app just a few months ago? Anyway, that's it for Brett. She shares another TikTok, and I would think she's being played if I didn't also think she knows exactly what she's doing and has no shame. On to Amir, who is also hitting the snap fraud angle hard, and I assume they're doing it to, well, partly to make people feel better about their neighbors going hungry, and also to further convince people that government assistance is bad, actually. He also decides to display his misogyny and overall horribleness in this video, for which I am very grateful because I have to admit I was kind of erring on the side of he's not that bad. I was wrong. He's no better than his BFF Brett or Ariel or Allie Beth or any of them. Now, you might be thinking that if Amir is so concerned about snap fraud, he's going to come at us with facts and studies and stats, right? Wrong. He is also using TikTok to make his point, and I am again baffled by how people can be so media illiterate. I was going to ask if they're aware they're being manipulated, but I think they are, and they're using that manipulation to manipulate their viewers. Go figure. Anyway, the only thing that you can gather from a reel is that someone has access to a phone, and the only point we can take from that is maybe not everyone should. I joke, but honestly, this is concerning. If anything can be taken as serious, whether it's outright satire or someone just posting something because they felt like it, or even worse, AI, then where does that leave us? Of course, that benefits folks like Brett and Amir, who will then have more fodder for their, aha, see, I told you this thing was bad, here is my proof. And so I am once again begging everyone watching this to be very careful about what they believe online, and that includes me. I try to be honest, I try to use sources, but I am also human, and you shouldn't believe something just because I said it. And now.
You should be building up fail-safes for yourself. Like, you should be more responsible and understanding that you can't always rely on the government for something, which is also ironic because we just had this No Kings protest. You in the streets marching about you don't want kings, but now you're begging for the kings to feed you. Pretty ironic there.
Again, the No Kings protests were about the massive overreach and constitutional violations of Trump and his admin, not about the government funding programs we pay taxes into. Genuinely, how does he not realize this? Also, if someone is earning so little income that they qualify for SNAP, how exactly does Amir figure they're going to be setting themselves up so they don't need their food stamps? Part of the point is that you need them. If you don't qualify. Okay. And it's not as though you get that much money every month. And you know, for all their talk about how people need to budget and spend responsibly, they sure do get upset when people treat themselves to something like lobster or salmon. What if they did budget so they could afford salmon that month? But honestly, I don't think these folks like Brett and Amir really care what people buy. They just think they should be punished for being poor. And Amir really makes that clear. I'm clutching this pencil so hard. And Amir really makes that clear when he tells us how SNAP should work instead. Because of course, he knows everything. Anyway, I have a question.
That is the thing. People actually get their food stamps and they sell it off. Like, they sell it off to their friends and their family and they exchange it for cash. I've seen people get drugs. I've seen people buy clothes, jewelry, get their nails done in exchange for somebody else to get the food stamp.
I'm very curious as to where Amir Odom has seen people selling food stamps to get drugs. But anyway, if he saw this, and no, watching a TikTok where someone says they've done this doesn't count, did he report it? And if no, why not?
And it's those kind of people that do take away from the real people that genuinely need this platform and actually need this help and this hand up when they're going through a rough time or just have a family to feed.
So I like this pencil, and I really hope I do not end up snapping it through this next section. Okay, so let's remember this. The ones committing fraud take away from the people who genuinely need a hand up or who have a family to feed. For my listeners, the text on the screen of this reel we're about to listen to reads, I have 6 kids and we eat off EBT, which is now shut down and won't be issuing any more benefits.
I just finally got confirmation that food stamps is officially cut for next month.
Now, I'm gonna let this play, but I feel like this is just we're gonna keep it real, y'all. We're gonna keep it real. There's no obligation for the government to really help you because you decide to open your legs and have 6 children.
Let's also remember that this is the same man who thinks the only reason someone should have an abortion is if they're a child themselves or they were assaulted. Should he not be horrified that this woman isn't being offered assistance, that those kids are going hungry? And while we're at it, let's also remember he just said those committing fraud take away from those who have a family to feed. She has a family to feed, and he's still doing this.
That's expensive. Children are expensive, and it shouldn't be on a taxpayer's dime to help you out because you didn't do proper planning with your legs and finances.
He's covering his mouth with his hands like he can't believe he just said that, but it's not cute. That's just misogyny. Note that the woman is blamed for this situation. It's her legs he's concerned about, not the man's. And it gets worse.
Yeah, you have 6 kids, and I really do feel bad for those kids. But I also just feel bad for those kids in general, that they were raised in really, really hard times. And this is coming from someone who's been raised in hard times. Hello, been evicted, seen the car get repossessed, homeless, the whole nine. Like, I've been through it. It's sad. But at what point are we gonna stop letting our empathy cloud our judgment and just say, you know what, everyone gets a handout, everyone gets a free-for-all, despite people knowingly and willingly putting themselves in those situations? And this is a little bit of a tangent, but this is why I get so frustrated when people are like, oh, gay people shouldn't adopt. Okay, well, it's like, damn, why can't a wealthy gay couple adopt 2 kids who need a home, put them in a really good school, take them on vacations, give them a really nice childhood, and set them up on a foundation to give them a good life? That's seen as like more bad. That's always being crapped on, this idea of 2 like gays adopting. But then we have people like this having kids nonstop, being raised in poor homes. You got stray people like just in the boonies, in the boonies and the hoods, just popping out kids left and right. And it's like, yay, hooray, family. But because I want to adopt, it's a problem. That's just a little tangent. That's just something that really irritates me. But
Amir, I promise you, shitting on poor people is not going to make conservatives accept you.
we're going to see what this lady has to say. But off the bat, 6 kids is not my problem. Sorry.
And the thing about a lot of stereotypes is they say that if you're on SNAP benefits, you don't work hard, you sit on your butt and you just collect checks, when that's not the case. I work hard every single day. I get up every single day and clean houses, and I still rely on food stamps to feed my 6 children because the prices are so high. It's unrealistic to think about not having food stamps. Next month, I'm so terrified because 6 babies are always eating. Plus myself, I eat about 1 meal a day, but still. And it's like, they always say don't rely on the government. But sometimes, like,
I was just about to say that. Like, I want to let her talk. You shouldn't be relying on the government. That was a key word that really stuck out to me because I'm all for helping you out. But the second you're dependent on the government just to exist, like you are depending on it because you decide to have 6 kids. I don't know what to tell you. I don't.
in situations right now where the government literally has raised prices over 300% on just everything, eggs, milk, everything, you do have to rely on stamps, especially in my situation where I just got custody of 3 children on top of mine. So we need it. Like, I don't know what's going to happen, but I'm terrified right now. And I don't know if anyone else is scared, but this is scary.
It's scary, and I feel bad for the children, but like, it's not our problem.
He's doing that hands over mouth thing again, and this woman is doing what conservatives want. She has 3 kids. She took 3 other kids out of the foster system. She works. And as someone who was a house cleaner, that job is no joke. We have no idea about her marital status, but either way, she is doing what she can to make a good life for her family, and this is Amir's response. Not our problem. It doesn't really matter what you do. Conservatives don't want the government to do anything for the people, just for corporations. And they'll call it freedom.
I feel like at one end, I do feel bad saying that, and it sucks. But on the other, it's like, you the one that had 6 kids. 3 now, and you've got custody of 3 more. So why did you bring on more?
We'll never know why she took in those 3 kids, though my guess is because she didn't want them in foster care. But he does know that just because someone relies on food stamps, that doesn't mean they're an unfit parent. For someone who hates saying ugly things, he sure does say them a lot.
At what point are we going to prioritize this, like, healthy family planning? At what point are we going to prioritize being financially smart, family planning, having good goals set out for yourself? Like, when is that going to take priority instead of you just freeballing life and then expecting the government to help you for life? Something's got to give.
He is aware that SNAP accounts for 1.5% of federal spending, right? And that at no point in human history have there ever not been people in need of assistance. I'm very curious if Amir truly believes conservatism will lead to 100% employment and everyone will be housed and fed, or if he thinks it won't and we just shouldn't care. Anyway, let's talk about what Amir thinks food assistance should look like.
I'm personally down with the food stamps just being gone completely, and we're sending out meal kits like Blue Apron or something, like Hungry Root, where we just send out the groceries to the families. You tell us how many kids you got, what's your family size, heights, weights, all that, and boom, you get a box of groceries pre-planned. There's your meals. Go about your day. Because if you are dependent on the government, if you're dependent on tax-paying services, it shouldn't be like a free-for-all, I get what I want, do what I want type of deal. No, that's my deal situation.
I have questions. What about allergies, sensitivities, texture issues, that people should be able to eat the food they enjoy and that people know their situation best, and that's what they need and have time for? I suspect Amir falls into the trap of thinking that people on SNAP just sit around all day and collect benefits, but that's not true. 70% of SNAP recipients work full-time, and even if we pretend his idea is feasible, I assume the government would be purchasing the food, but would it then also be buying the boxes to pack it in, paying people to do the packing as well as for transport, which would be the vehicle, the driver, fuel, and of course, repairs and maintenance on the vehicle. I don't think that would be saving money. But again, I suspect this is more about punishing people who rely on SNAP than about actually saving money. Oh, and the argument that SNAP at least stays in the country and isn't being used to arm other countries, Amir says that's valid to a certain extent.
Yes, the money is staying here, being recirculated here, but that doesn't mean I'm also okay with it being taken advantage of. It doesn't mean I'm also okay with the amount of taxes that I pay. Just watching it being abused, because that's not fun for me. It's not fun paying these taxes and then seeing it just getting taken advantage of or used. So yeah, on one end, I'm glad it's staying in the United States, but on the other end, I'm also not happy that I'm being taken advantage.
So Amir is upset about the minuscule amount he pays for SNAP, again, 1.5% of federal budget, but he's okay with sending bombs to Israel and giving Argentina $20 billion? Yeah, he just wants to punish people.
I do feel bad for all the children out there, but again, at what point is our empathy clouding our judgment? At what point are we going to call out the bad parents that just can't close their legs? So at what point are we going to call the bad parents who can't budget? At what point are we going to point out the bad parents who are just literally depending, actively depending on the government to feed them? What do we do about that, and where do we go?
At no point in this video does it occur to Amir that SNAP was a solution to people, including kids, going hungry. Hey, that war on poverty? Whatever happened to that? But hey, at least this time, he blamed parents for being unable to keep their legs closed. So pro-life.
Is that not just life? Ooh, this episode's spicy. It takes a lot of patience. It's going to take a lot of patience. It's going to take a lot of just processing. Because it sucks that so many people are going to have to struggle in life. What is life? We don't live in this society, or at least I don't aspire to live in this society, in this world where everything is easy for everybody and everybody gets access to different things, because at the end of the day, somebody has to fund it. I'm all for it being using as a hand up, not a hand out. I'm all in favor. I will feel bad. I feel bad for the people who are actively depending on it, that are using it the right way, that only takes the bare minimum. That I'm gonna feel bad for them. But at the same time, life.
Again, so pro-life. But I don't believe Amir does feel bad for people who rely on assistance. He knows he should, so he says it, but no. In my opinion, he doesn't feel anything for people who are struggling. He feels no desire, no drive to make the world better, and he uses TikToks of people behaving badly to make himself feel better about his lack of empathy. His next TikTok is of someone saying that SNAP benefits show people couldn't survive natural selection, and if this was 10,000 years ago, the world would be very different. We wouldn't be working for money, using some arbitrary system that determines what each job is worth, and funneling money to the top. Trying to compare our current world to natural selection is not honest, but Amir likes this, of course. And I would like to add that, yes, the government does indeed have to fund entitlements. That's what my taxes go for. And the hand that feeds you isn't the government, it's fellow citizens, because it's funded by taxes. And even if empathy is a foreign concept to some, they should understand that having a fed population is in the best interests of everyone. In conclusion, Brett Cooper and Amir Odom are terrible people who see no reason to care about others or to make the world a better place if it doesn't directly benefit them. And to switch it up a bit, let's have a look at this article published November 2nd on Substack. Yes, the government should feed us. What's the point of living in a society if not to care for one another? Federal SNAP funding has run out, and Donald Trump is refusing to use the $5 billion in emergency funds set aside for this exact purpose. A federal judge has ordered the administration to disperse the money, but Trump immediately took to Truth Social to argue against the judge's order. Several state governments are rushing to fill the void, but that's a stopgap at best. In all likelihood, millions of people are about to get very hungry very soon, and it's all entirely avoidable. this needless pain didn't come out of nowhere. The right has long preached that it's good to cut off assistance to anyone and everyone, and now we see fascists celebrating and justifying the SNAP cutoff. Some people peddle lies about fraud. Others say it's terrible that food stamps can pay for unnecessary items like cookies or Dijon mustard or lobster. And some just put their entire belief system out there, crying that the government shouldn't be feeding anyone anyway. None of this is new. We all know how Ronald Reagan ran on the made-up, racist idea of a welfare queen who he claimed used 80 names, 30 addresses, 15 telephone numbers to collect food stamps, Social Security, veterans benefits for 4 non-existent deceased veteran husbands, as well as welfare. Her tax-free cash income alone has been running $150,000 a year. This character was made up, of course, and was the embodiment of the idea that no one, and certainly no black folks, should be receiving support from the government. As with many of the right-wing ideas sold largely on the basis of racism, this character was used to hurt people of all races, and poor folks in particular, by justifying cuts to food stamps and the broader welfare state. As Claire Bond Potter writes, Reagan ultimately sold this country on the strange idea that the government that helps families most helps them least. In 1981 and 1982 alone, Reagan made more than $22 billion in cuts to social welfare programs. He made the poor poorer, while increasing military spending, a norm that was to continue for decades. The ethos behind Reaganomics grew out of deep-seated American myths about work, individualism, and the concept of deserving. For decades and centuries, the U.S. has been rife with odd beliefs like prosperity means God favors you, or pull yourself up by your bootstraps, or the notion that we shouldn't rely on others for help. The progressive era of the early 20th century and the collective response to the Great Depression changed the nature of society significantly by creating protections for workers, forcing some redistribution of wealth, and creating programs that made our government care for those in need. But when Reagan came along and told people that mooches were taking their hard-earned money, he was able to tap into an underlying set of beliefs that had never been dismantled. And Democrats didn't push back much. In 1992, Clinton offered a plan to end welfare as we know it. He and other conservative Democrats thought it was better politics to endlessly move right than to push back against the toxic and dishonest beliefs that led people to think cutting food money made more sense than cutting money for the Pentagon. The archived White House website from the Clinton-Gore administration still has an entire section entitled Reforming Welfare by Promoting Work and Responsibility that brags about reducing welfare and pushing people back to work. The reality is, millions and millions of people who receive food stamps are working. They still need food assistance because many employers, including corporate giants like Amazon and Walmart, are allowed by our government to pay unlivable wages. So SNAP, in many cases, is effectively a corporate subsidy that fills the gap, which should be filled by billions and billions in corporate profits. But beyond the fact that food stamps act as corporate welfare, we need to reject the idea that the government feeding people is bad. From Reagan to conservative Democrats, we're on the tail end of over 4 decades of politicians telling us that the government should do less and less for the working class while spending nearly $1 trillion on war every year. Somehow, the libertarian conception of government won over the minds of countless Americans, while the government never actually shrank. Instead, while people were distracted by the scapegoating of the poor and by non-existent welfare queens, the government was used by the rich to transfer billions and billions of dollars from the working class to the ruling class. So what should governments be for? Very, very few people would argue that the government should be a tool for giving men like Elon Musk billions of dollars. And yet, that's exactly what's happening as we speak. SNAP is no longer being funded, but Elon Musk's SpaceX is about to get another $2 billion from the Pentagon. These billions are for Trump's Golden Dome project, a theoretical dome to protect America from missile attacks. It's not needed, it may never come to fruition, but it will be used to transfer billions and billions from you and me to men like Elon Musk, who already get billions from the government. Somehow, while the Pentagon budget reaches $1 trillion a year, we're expected to think the government is wasting money by feeding the hungry. Thankfully, most people aren't buying it anymore. 66% of people think families who need SNAP should get more money for food, and 67% don't want Congress to cut food stamps. This is just one indicator of a much broader societal shift. The lies of neoliberalism, the lie that all you need to do is pull yourself up by your bootstraps, the lie that we shouldn't be concerned with taking care of one another, these deeply misguided ideas are losing power. But we need to go further. Not cutting good things is a start, but now we need to affirmably decide that government is about helping one another. We need to enact a world where human society is about coming together for our collective good. We're not isolated, we're not individuals acting in vacuums, no matter what libertarian and neoliberal beliefs say. Each of us lives and acts within the web of human connection, and it's time to create systems that operate accordingly. Change has begun, and now we need to accelerate it. The far-right weirdos who say we have no obligation to care for one another are in the minority, whether they know it or not. Most people don't want our government to suddenly stop feeding the hungry, and as inequality gets worse and worse, more and more people are rejecting the lies of years past. People are seeing that Reaganism was fundamentally a lie, that his talk of small government was always code for screwing over the poor while giving handouts to the rich. And now, most vitally, people are seeing that we need something different. From fascism to the gross excess of late capitalism to the deterioration of the middle class, millions of people now see that none of us can do this alone. It was never really about pulling ourselves up by our bootstraps. An idea so ludicrous, the metaphor is intentionally nonsensical. In reality, The rich got rich on the backs of the poor, pulling themselves up by climbing over and stepping on others. That is the ugly system we can now reject and replace. And instead, we can build a system where we lean on each other and care for each other, a system of real democracy where the government is an extension of our will, where it enacts the support we want to provide for one another, rather than enriching the few at the expense of the many. This is a vision for a better world, a vision that directly and deliberately conflicts with the notion that each of us should only care about our personal gain, a vision that opposes one man having 500 billion while 42 million people lose their food money. We're expected to believe that the battle is between someone making $75,000 and someone making $25,000, while the real conflict is between those with enough money to buy elections and the rest of us. We don't have time to be distracted by scapegoating. We don't have time to misdirect our anger at the poor while the super rich laugh behind our backs. We have to focus, we have to fight the real enemy, and we have to build a world where no one goes hungry in the midst of such abundance. End quote. In short, we need each other, and if you don't rely on assistance, that doesn't make you better than those who do, and unless you're a millionaire, that could just as easily be you. Most Americans can't cover a $1,000 emergency, so I don't know where that attachment came from. And honestly, Americans' callous disregard for those less fortunate than themselves is concerning. And that's it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. Please like if you enjoyed the video, dislike if you didn't, subscribe if you find yourself enjoying my content in general and aren't yet subscribed, and let me know what you think below. I would like to give extra thanks to my patrons. My socials, sources, and resources are linked below, and Merry Solstice!